So there's been a lot going around on TikTok and on the interwebs talking about Bella Hadid having morning anxiety. So I wanted to quickly explain the difference between morning anxiety, generalized anxiety, and how it might be related to your cortisol response. All right, let's dive in. Hey there and welcome. My name is Dr. Jessica. I'm a naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, and health coach, and I talk a lot about finding ways to help manage your stress and anxiety and preventing burnout. So Bella Hadid, who is a famous model, if you are not up to date on the TikTok and the children these days, but famous model who recently was on her TikTok kind of sharing about how she kind of has what she describes as morning anxiety. So what exactly is that? Usually symptoms are very similar to anxiety. So maybe racing heart, racing thoughts, you feel like you can't think. Sometimes it's difficult to get out of bed. Sometimes you might feel wired and tired. You may have a lot of muscle tension and it may feel like your heart is beating out of your chest. Almost similar to a panic attack, but not quite as severe, generally speaking. Now, the difference between generalized anxiety and this kind of morning anxiety is that this usually only happens in the morning, whereas generalized anxiety, those feelings or those thoughts can come on pretty much at any time during the day or night. Now, of course, this can also happen because of a low blood sugar response as well. So with any condition or with any concerning symptoms, make sure you're talking with your healthcare provider. One of the things that is important to mention is that this could also be caused by your cortisol awakening response. You'll often see it abbreviated as CAR. Now, you can check out some of my other videos where I talk a lot about cortisol and the stress response and what happens when our cortisol is really high. But basically, cortisol should be following this pattern where it starts to elevate about an hour or so before you wake, and then it has its highest level pretty much about an hour or so after you wake up. And so cortisol kind of helps get you going, get you up out of bed, and then it should decline throughout the day and kind of dip off as you're ready to go to sleep. And then we kind of start that cycle all over again. Now, with someone experiencing things like morning anxiety, a lot of times what can happen is that cortisol response can kind of go whoop and go right through the roof and hit really high. And when that cortisol hits really hard, you start to maybe you can get shaky, you can feel your heart rate really kind of starting to pump. It's basically priming your body to run away. And this can obviously be problematic because it can give you feelings of anxiety. So there are many things that you can do to kind of help regulate your cortisol, like working with your sleep, working with your nutrition, working with your exercise and your mindset, all things that will help to naturally regulate your cortisol. Of course, there are lots of supplements and herbs that can also help as well. However, one of the things you need to know is this truly a cortisol response? And the way to find that out is actually doing some salivary testing. Now, this is one of the tests that I do use inside of my program, The Better Health Blueprint. It's a salivary test that you get at home because I like to test and see before recommending any herbs or supplements or changes to nutrition. I'll just quickly show you what it looks like and the information that you can glean from it. There are many functional tests out there that will measure your cortisol awakening response by many different brands. This one is from Precision Analytics, which is part of the Dutch Plus test, which I also do to help look at hormones, but it has a cortisol awakening response. And so as you see, they give you a high and a low range. And then we look to see throughout those 24 hours, what is your free saliva cortisol pattern doing. So if you were having an elevated response, you would see that this blue line would be above the high range limit, usually within that first hour of waking. So this is actually a great way to really test but not guess about, are you having, morning anxiety, or are you having an issue with your cortisol awakening response? The other great thing about this test, and this is a sample, but it also gives you the metabolites. So you're measuring your cortisol throughout the day. It's not just one measurement, but it's actually seeing what your range is doing throughout, and you can have all this information. And again, you're also looking at whether you're having an active version of cortisol or if you're having more cortisone, which one are you more dominant in? All this is really helpful when you're working with a functional practitioner or working with, changing your diet, your lifestyle, or looking for nutritional or supplements or nutraceuticals, because it's going to tell you what you actually should be taking rather than guessing. For me, this is what I do inside of my coaching program, the Better Health Blueprint, and having access to this type of information and this level of detail saves you so much money in the long term and actually customizes it so that you are getting what is right for you. All right, I hope that this video was helpful. If you have questions, please leave them down in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you've learned something and share it with a friend who may find it helpful. All right, I will see you in the next video. Bye.